I climbed across the mountain tops, swam all across the ocean blue.
Hail and well-met slayers of giants, and welcome to episode 161 of the show. I've tried to make sure this show gets to you every single week at the same day and time, and I don't think I've missed any yet, and I've only been a bit late on a couple. And now, when I start telling you a story in serial form and promise you chapter 4, I find myself needing a week's delay. But I can give you an episode providing an explanation. And that's an episode, so the streak continues, right? If you've missed the last few episodes, please go back and listen to, watch, read chapters 1 through 3 of Tilting at Windmills. I think you'll really enjoy it. I've almost finished chapter 4, and the book is coming along really well. So why aren't you getting chapter 4 this week, as promised? Not to divulge too much, but last week I thought I would be living permanently in Cleveland, Ohio. And now I'm driving across the country to live permanently with my wife Chris in Portland, Oregon. And for those of you keeping track, this is after a relocation to Barcelona, Spain, where I fully expected to spend the rest of my life. If you don't know why I went to Spain in the first place, I wrote a whole book about that, Dear America, a Breakup Letter. I hope my return to the U.S. doesn't take away from that book. I think most of my arguments for why a person ought to consider leaving the U.S. still hold up, and many have proven to be correct. Do you still think I was crazy to worry we would get to the point where federal agents were killing Americans in the streets? And I want to make clear, Spain was wonderful to us. Barcelona will always be one of my favorite cities in the world, and I still think in other circumstances I could live there for the rest of my life. But that in other circumstances caveat carries a lot of weight. Our situation was not viable, and it took me far too long to admit that. I came back broke, broken, and bereft. In the same way Barcelona would have been a wonderful place to live, I think Cleveland could have been great too. The number of total strangers who sent me welcome messages when they heard I was moving there speaks to the city's culture of acceptance. I was excited to live in a place with such a great art museum, a burgeoning literary community, and so many ways I plan to get involved in spaces where my love of writing and my passion for social justice work would intersect. And my family lives there. In the short term, they were rescuing me, giving me a place to couch surf, helping me get back on my feet, but I really did believe I could get healed up financially and emotionally, and eventually get to the place where I could be an emotional support to my parents, my brother, and my nieces. I love them all so much, and I was genuinely excited to get to spend a lot more time with them. And yet, here I go, off to a new home. Perhaps more of the details will make their way into Tilting at Windmills, the novel, but for now, suffice it to say, when you find yourself in a place where you know a relationship is harmful, and you know it's not going to get better, it's wise to leave. I was in that kind of relationship with the United States, and I ended up in that same place in Barcelona. Cleveland might have been a place to heal, but I expect that would have been a years-long ordeal. Conversely, when you have a chance at a relationship that will fill your life with love and hope and joy, you have to jump at that, even if there's a chance it will break your heart. I took a risk on courting Barcelona, and I didn't bring enough to the relationship. I own that failure. Now I have a chance to have the marriage I need with the person I need. And while I think Portland will be a great fit for me in so many ways, I'm not driving across Wyoming because I'm desperate to live in Portland. If I had my way, I'd be headed to an international border. But we've learned a lot about the difficulty of an international move, and the far more important key to my future is Chris. We had some essential healing to do to know we wouldn't repeat the patterns we developed in Spain, and now I will go with her wherever life takes us. I hope that will be to a future of walking my dogs through the streets of Portland, attending readings and concerts by my friends there, protesting ICE every chance I get. But if we end up in a tent refugee camp in Canada or a hideout in the forest of Uruguay, as long as Chris and I can be there for one another, that's where I belong. And rather than just being my personal train wreck of a life, maybe this can be a useful metaphor for all of you. The last few years of this show has been a story of hope battling despair. And I know those of you who have your eyes open have been feeling a lot of that too. To put it in the parlance of writers, the tension between despair and hope is caused by a disconnect between the present tense and the future tense. Despair is rooted in a description of the present, the narrative we tell ourselves, sometimes in exaggerated purple prose, of the evidence we experience right now. One of my greatest strengths as a writer and one of my greatest flaws as a human being is that I am far too focused on the future. I struggle to exist in the present tense. This not only prevents me from enjoying the world around me when things are good, it makes me naively optimistic about the future, childly credulous about promises made, overly permissive and of unacceptable behavior by friends and strangers who, I'm convinced, are just having a bad day and will be better tomorrow. Little aside, that makes me a better teacher, and I want to recommend it to all my colleagues. Treat every student like they will grow out of it and reach an even greater potential than you can even see now. So many will rise to that. Even outside of teaching, that attitude will make you kinder to fellow drivers in traffic, more friendly to customer service workers, more open to looking beyond the kinds of little cultural differences that we might accidentally misinterpret as personal slights. But don't take it as far as I do. Be hopeful. Don't be a fool. But even my optimism has limits. When everything in the present starts to incline us to tell a sad story, or worse, a horror story, in the future tense, that despair in the present tense becomes our reality. Hope comes from telling yourself a better story in future tense, even if that is a fantasy right now. Today can be an axe-wielding, hockey mask-wearing serial killer, and you can still be hopeful as long as tomorrow is traveling to distant stars in spaceships and riding dragons over waves crashing on distant shores. And love. Never forget about love. Love is the point. Make sure your story in future tense is a story of love. Many of us, especially those of us living in the United States, are living through an era of despair. We would be fools to believe the future will naturally autocorrect to one of a kind of justice and peace and love that was never true in the first place. But I want to encourage you to tell yourself a story in future tense. The pedo-in-chief is not immortal, and after this regime collapses, there will be an impulse to go back to normal. Let's hope for better. Dream for better. We do not need to live in a world where the United States funds, causes, and profits from slaughter around the world. We don't need to live in a country that incarcerates more of its people than any other nation on earth. We don't need to live in a country which, despite having the highest GDP, lets people die from lack of healthcare and clean water and food. Please believe me when I tell you the story of your future can get so much better than the past tense we've experienced. My future tense has gone from a very depressing story to something I am so excited to experience. And we can do that collectively as well. As another Gorman has told you, and as my wife's tattoo of Amanda Gorman's words reminds me every day, when day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Sending you strength in your present tense and hope for your future tense. See you back here for Chapter 4 next week. Thanks, everybody.